Hi and welcome everybody to the Endo Fertility Podcast, where you will be empowered to learn how to thrive and conceive with endometriosis. If you want to understand more about your endo, how this can affect your fertility, and how you can personally take action to optimise your health and life, then this is the place for you. I'm your host, Dr. Lizzie Alexander, the Endo Fertility Specialist, and I'm a marine biologist turned integrative nutrition and health coach and holistic massage therapist. Most importantly, I know what it's like to have chronic fatigue, endo, and struggle with fertility. I am now a super busy yet thriving wife, business owner, and mother of a gorgeous little boy. Join me every Wednesday as I jump into topics that will support and guide your healing and fertility journey, from health and nutrition, lifestyle, emotional and spiritual support, and much more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy listening. This episode is brought to you by my Endo Fertility Resource Library. Inside the library, you'll discover the free resource hub with 3 great downloadable products to get you started. An ebook called 5 Ways to Start Dropping Your Pain and Optimise Your Fertility. A short guide to sperm health, great for getting your man started on improving his own health. And an infographic with 88 things I did to get pregnant. Make sure to check out the show notes for the link. Hey, welcome to episode 42. How are we doing this week? I won't lie, things have been a bit manic. I cannot wait for Easter and just to have a little bit of a break. I've been really busy with clients, and so my social media presence has been pretty poor, and also just trying to have a healthy work-life balance. But there's just so much going on at the moment. What we're starting to prepare for our next military posting this summer, which is overseas, and trying to stay vigilant with my own health. So I feel like there's a lot of balls in the air and I keep dropping a few. I don't know whether you feel the same. So this month is Stress Awareness Month. And so it's really important to be aware of what stresses are present for you and if they're pushing you over the edge. Trying to conceive can be a massive stressor, along with having endometriosis. And if you add onto that a busy life, busy work life, social life, and anything else, it's highly likely that you are busy. And unfortunately, busy to our body can only mean stress. And that results in your adrenals having to work hard to see you through it all. I will do some quick tips for helping to manage stress when trying to conceive next time I do a solo episode, and I'm hoping to do something on Instagram as well, so keep an eye out there. But right now, just remember that sleep is your best friend and don't skimp on it. I know it's so easy to, it's the thing that I struggle with. I've said it before, but it's especially important in your 30s and particularly in your 40s. It becomes even more important because our bodies just don't handle stress as well, and it really starts to impact on our blood sugar and our hormones. You could also go back and listen to episode 24 with Nicole Jardim on how stress exacerbates estrogen dominance and ovarian dysfunction, and also episode 25 straight after that with Jessica Drummond, where she talks about heart rate monitors in managing pain, but also it comes into the stress aspect as well. So I thought I'd just raise that, seeing as it's Stress Awareness Month. This season, I wanted to share a number of episodes that will help to optimise your cycle and how you can use food and lifestyle to do this. So today, I wanted to share some great tips to help improve the first phase of your cycle, your follicular phase, when you know you have endometriosis, and this would also apply if you have adenomyosis. So here is this week's episode. So today we're going to talk about the follicular phase, which involves the period, egg maturation and development of your womb lining. So first of all, I'm going to talk about what that actually means, and then bring in some tips that are going to help, food and lifestyle tips that are going to really help there. So there are 2 phases to the follicular phase: the menstruating follicular, i.e. your period, from days 1 to anywhere from days 4, 5, 6, 7. Secondly, the non-menstruating follicular phase it could be from day 5 to 8 through to ovulation. And do note that I've kind of given bands there because it does vary on how long your period is and of course how early or late you ovulate. So during phase 1.1, I'm going to call it, during your period, your progesterone levels have basically dropped off if you don't become pregnant. And this then causes the breakdown and the shedding of your endometrium lining, which results in your period. Now, we should all know this. When it comes to our period, many of us, particularly with endometriosis, we don't have a love for our period. And also society has this ridiculous notion that it's just not something to be talked about. It's taboo. It's getting more common. Don't even get me started on this subject, but we need to learn to love our period. It tells us an awful lot. It's also the start of our next cycle. I think we always think of it, particularly when you're trying to conceive, that it's the end of things. Well, actually, it's the start of your cycle. That's why the first day of your period is day 1. And it is really important because what you do during your period does set you up for the rest of your cycle. And that's why I really wanted to talk about it. The flow of your period also tells us a lot as to whether it's a good flow or whether it's less optimal. You've got a less optimal lining, and work needs to be done to be creating a really good womb lining for that embryo to be implanting. So as I said, it's a good start. It's a really good place to start thinking of your period as the time when your body does house clearing, as it needs to get rid of this old lining completely. So it's nice and clean, and then it's ready to develop a new lining this month. So with this in mind, movement of blood and energy is really important at this time. You don't want to be over stagnating. It is good to rest during this period. I'll come on to that. But if we don't have some movement, and that can be physical movement, but also movement within our bodies, then there are going to be problems in terms of trying to make sure that we get rid of that lining completely, and that there's no old stagnant blood that can be left there for the new lining then to kind of form over the top. At the same time as this happening, lots of estrogen is hopefully being produced. And I think also with endometriosis, we have this connotation that we're scared of estrogen. We automatically sort of associate it with pain, with bad things. It's not. Estrogen is an amazing hormone. It does so much. It's so important for our brain health. It helps develop that follicle, and it's, during the final egg maturation phase, so that it's getting ready for ovulation. It also helps drive the development of the endometrium lining. So it is really important that we have enough estrogen. And as you move into your 40s and perimenopause, estrogen starts dropping off, and that's when you start to see periods becoming lighter and your lining just isn't as thick. And that's why it's really important to actually, at this part of your cycle, so during your period and then before ovulation, having nice healthy levels of estrogen. And this is why it's also really important to review your previous cycle, to have a time of reflection. So when you're having your period, taking time to be calm, you might feel introverted and introspective, and it's time to clear your mind, rest and recuperate your body, and review your previous cycle, see what happened. Why did it happen in a certain way? What was going on? What symptoms did you have? And taking the time to rest so that you're ready for this new cycle, and to try and also deal and let go of any disappointment and focus on this resting, cleaning period, because of course you will. Day 1 is likely going to be a very emotional time if you haven't already realized that you're not pregnant in the days leading up to your period already. Now, what are the things that can be done during your period? Well, there's plenty. I think the first one, which, to be honest, when you've got endometriosis and you've got this knowledge of pain, many of you, if you're still in pain, will have done this anyway, which is clearing your social calendar. So it isn't a must. I have to say, over the years, when now I don't suffer in pain, I have a tendency to plan too much over that time. And it's really kind of like, actually, even if you feel great, it's still that time to kind of just slow down a bit, particularly when you're older, to make sure that you're saving the energetics for the development of the beginning of your cycle. It's really, so if you can take some time just to kind of have a few quiet days at the beginning of your period, that really, really does help. Number 2 is ensure a clean house. So as I've said already, is you want to be making sure that your period properly cleans out. You need rest for this. One thing that you can do is you can use vaginal steaming on days 4 to 7, so after your period is finished, and this can really help cleanse it. I'm not going to go into the details of how you do this at this point. That might be another podcast. And gentle movement is another one. So gentle movement, gentle exercise during this time. So anything from yoga, particularly cat-cow, hip gyrations, to really sort of get movement into those hip areas, and just some regular walking and moving around during your period time. The other one is just rest and warmth. month, keeping your body warm, not using loads of energy. I have to say, I've posted before about going paddleboarding, and it's like day 1 of your period. And although, to be honest, paddleboarding when I go is very calm and reflective, and I'm not particularly doing it very energetically anyway. And I find that very, just actually quite restful, and being with friends, which is very soulful. Now, the other two that are really good is journaling. It can be a really nice time to reflect on the month, as I've said before, is to reflect what's gone on in the previous month by writing down your emotions, letting out the emotions that you weren't successful in trying to conceive. If you are trying to conceive at the moment, you might be taking a break to focus on healing your body. It depends what you are actually doing. So yeah, journaling can just be really, really nice way of getting all those things out. It might be more active journaling where you're following and writing down certain things. You might be answering questions. That's what I do with clients, is I start to sort of ask myself questions, or my clients in their, questions about how they feel during this time, what they need to let go, what energy you would like to put into this next cycle, how you would like to do it differently. And then the final thing really is focusing on iron-rich foods, making sure that you're not iron deficient, because particularly those who do have heavy periods, who are losing a lot of blood, it's really important not to become iron deficient. And each month that goes past, if you become a little bit more with each and you're not replenishing your iron stores, then that can have big consequences on all sorts of things, from your thyroid to just your overall energy within your body. And we want to have those energy stores up so that we can put the energy into your egg maturation back into your womb lining. So we want to be eating foods rich in iron, so anything from red meats are really good. And I know that with endometriosis there is a lot of advice out there saying, steer clear completely of red meats, and my philosophy, there are different philosophies on it. My philosophy is it's not so much about the red meat, it's about the source of where the red meat comes from. You want to be looking at, good quality, organic if you can, local. Local can be better than organic. It depends what that is. But if it's locally produced, where it is, it hasn't got, lots of hormones in it. It's been out on pasture on nice green, lush grasses, then red meat is brilliant. It has so many nutrients and vitamins in there that will really replenish those iron stores. And even better than that is offal. I know that a lot of people don't like offal, they don't like the sound of offal, but you'll be amazed. I've had clients I've worked with where they've actually been like vegetarian, and then they have actually brought in and surprised themselves when they've realised that they're actually missing some key nutrients, key ones being iron and B12. So offal is a really good one. And the way I do it is I will buy like a kilo maybe of chicken liver from the local butcher, and make a big batch of pate and put them into ramekins, and then put them in the freezer, and then literally take out a ramekin every time I have a period. So I might make up next 3 months, 3 months worth, and take it out, and then I have pate over my period. And it's a really good way of getting the iron in there. And the other thing is you can use the pate secretly in making meatloaf, in making meatballs, spaghetti, bolognese. If you're doing anything like that and you don't particularly like the taste of the pate, you can actually add it into things, and you can disguise it and you won't know it's there. And the other, bone broth, and then of course like high rich iron vegetables. Spinach is another one, for example. So really focusing on your iron rich foods. Going back to the offal though, if you really can't take it in foods, another way is actually to take liver supplements is another way of doing it. You can do that. Or if you are a vegan, then obviously you need to look, a vegan or a vegetarian, you need to look at taking an iron supplement over your period in particular to make sure you're renourishing yourself. So moving on to phase 2. So after your period has happened and we're in the non-menstruating part of the follicular phase, you really want to nourish your body so you've got the energy to build a really healthy lining and develop these, follicles, and then go on to mature one egg. So at this particular time, your pituitary is releasing follicle stimulating hormone known as FSH, and this will cause one dominant follicle to be chosen and then to mature in the ovary. So after that, luteinizing hormone, or LH, which you will know because of LH sticks, OPEC sticks, will start to rise. And it's this hormone that then causes ovulation. Now, at the same time, there is also this increase in estrogen, which is causing the endometrium to thicken. And ideally, you want it to be around 8 millimeters thick. You'll obviously only know if it's this thick if you're going through IVF, or you might be having ultrasound scanning, so that they can then tell the thickness of it. A thin lining, unfortunately, can cause poor implantation and also early pregnancy loss. So making sure that actually having enough estrogen is really important, and I'll come on and talk about how to support that and why, in what scenarios you might actually have low estrogen with endometriosis. At the same time as this, testosterone is also increasing alongside the estrogen, and this gives you a sense of like confidence, power, makes you feel more extroverted and sexy, and your skin might also be better. Now, also at this time, your cervix starts beginning to produce the fertile mucus. So that's kind of a really quick roll through of what's happening within your body. Now, I mentioned about the poor endometrium. It's really important about having a really good womb lining. Now, some of the reasons why you might not is low estrogen, which I'll come on to in a minute. Like I said, poor blood flow to the uterus. Now, endometriosis can impair this through growths. Unfortunately, it could be lack of poor movement, for example. So if you're very stagnated in the job you're doing an awful lot of sitting, and then you're sort of doing much exercise in that time, you can end up with quite a stagnant pelvis. And we don't want a stagnant pelvis. We want lots of good blood flow into that area, lots of oxygen, lots of nutrients. Another reason is endometriosis in itself can affect the lining of your womb, fibroids as well, and then also adhesions and scar tissues on the uterus. I'm not going to go into how those occur because that will take up the whole episode. So what can be done basically? What can we do after our period that will really help to improve your lining and also your egg maturation period? Not egg quality, because that takes a lot longer than just this time period from your period until ovulation. So supporting healthy estrogen, you don't want too much and you don't want too little. It's a little bit of that Goldilocks syndrome. You want the right amount. So it's really important actually, particularly if you are on the slightly lesser side, because unfortunately it's not always clear with endometriosis. Even though you may have high amounts of estrogen, generally it's because the estrogen is higher in your luteal phase, in the second part of your cycle, which is why you get that pain leading up to your period. You will get a surge of estrogen. But here we're wanting estrogen to be at a good level at this point. We're wanting it to be able to create that healthy lining, like I said. So what do we do? How do we know if we've got enough estrogen? Well, one of the parts is knowing how early or late we ovulate, also knowing what our period is like. If our period is quite scant, it's only like 2 or 3 days, it's quite watery, it's not nice and dark and thick and rich and red, these are all giving signs that you probably haven't got enough estrogen. If it's really heavy and you've got a lot of heavy bleeding for 6 or 7 days, 5 days, it's always rich and red, then you've probably got a very thick lining, and your lining may be too thick. So, what you do at the beginning of your cycle will determine what happens later in your cycle. And this is really important. And that's why I always recommend that my clients monitor their symptoms and their signs, because we are all different. And not all, like I said, not all women with endometriosis have high estrogen. And this is particularly the case if you're in your late 30s and early 40s, because your estrogen also starts, it's not as strong, it starts diminishing. And so it is important to look after it. And then the other thing, of course, when you've got endo is, we all know that cruciferous vegetables, brassicas, all really help to pull estrogen out of the body and through into the liver, and it helps the detoxification process. The only thing is, if you're absolutely hammering that, you are eating too much, you could be pulling out too much estrogen into your body. And if you haven't worked on your liver detoxification pathways, you can be separating them into broken down molecules that then, if they sort of don't then go on through the detoxification process in the liver in a way that means that it's not backlogged. So basically you've got phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification. it's very easy to pull it into the liver with your brassicas, with your cruciferous vegetables. But if your COMT methylation is not working fast enough, you can end up with a backlog of these small particles, which then can cause problems depending on how they've been pulled into the liver. I won't go into the complexities of that. That's all to do with, like, the Dutch test will test that, for example. But what I'm saying here is, if you haven't got the highest amount of estrogen and you're pulling too much into your liver too quickly, you're not going to be having enough to then build this lining. So if you've got low estrogen and you know this, then you could try things like red clover, royal jelly. Maca is really good as well at this point of the cycle, and tribulus, flaxseed. So, and then the other one, because I've just talked about red clover, is you could check out my fertility tea, which is on my website. I'll pop the link in the show notes. Or you could work with a herbalist. There are plenty of herbalist concoctions, herbal concoctions that you can work through, which will help to increase your estrogen. And you would use that topically just at this point, not throughout, say, the whole of your cycle, because you don't want to be increasing your estrogen later on in your cycle, which is what's so common with women with endometriosis. Now, a study found that 2 tablespoons of flaxseed daily, twice a day over 6 weeks, helped to increase estrogen. In this case, this is where I would definitely do it only in the first part of your cycle, not in the second. And always watch your symptoms just to make sure that you don't have any flare-ups. If you do, then you know that you're antagonizing it, and it probably is part of the bigger picture to make sure that, you know, is your gut, gallbladder and liver properly clearing this estrogen out as well, so that there's no rogue excess estrogen floating around our body. You know, also remember that endometriosis cells actually make their own estrogen, which is why the picture can get a little bit complicated. Now, the other thing which will help with our endometrial lining, our womb lining, is movement, like I said before. So really important to increase your blood flow and circulation. Abdominal massage and castor oil packs are really good. The other thing is HIITs, high intensity workouts, and weights can really help boost your estrogen and testosterone. And testosterone can also be converted into estrogen through aromatization. Now, like I've said already, with endometriosis, you know, the problem of high estrogen is during this second phase of the cycle. But do watch out to see if you're feeling crampy. And that's why it's really important to monitor what your period is like at the beginning of each cycle, to see what's going on there. Is it heavy? Is it light? So rest. Again, don't overexert yourself too much. So movement is good, but I wouldn't be running around like, you know, really crazily, because you'll be using the energy that you really want to be putting into that. And again, it's especially important, I think, if you're in your late 30s, particularly in your 40s, because things just, you know, you want to line things up. You want to be putting the energy into building that womb lining and the maturation of the eggs. Remember, blood sugar management and stress, really key here. I've mentioned it before, because obviously if they're not balanced, then our sex hormones are not going to be balanced. So it's not just a case of, right, just do the things that we need to balance our sex hormones. Our hormones are kind of like in a pyramid, and actually your stress hormones and your blood sugar are right at the top of those. And if they are, if you're being stressed a lot and your blood sugar is all over the place, then you need to sort that out first, and then your sex hormones will come in and be more balanced after that. Another one, warm midriff and feet. This is more sort of Eastern tradition, but also from Mayan philosophy as well, just to make sure that your abdomen is nice and warm. You're not having to expend lots of energy to keep the area warm. Like a cold uterus, when you go and see an acupuncturist, for example, some women might have a cold uterus, and that really doesn't help matters. It's not helping to energetically prepare yourself for pregnancy. So you want to be keeping the area warm. And according to Mayan philosophy as well, like having cold feet, having bare feet on cold stones, on cold slabs, things like that is not a good idea, because it can cause uterus to contract. I will actually be talking to an abdominal therapist in a few episodes time, which is very exciting. I'm actually interviewing her tomorrow. So we will be talking about things like cold womb and contraction and what that actually means in further detail. Now, the other one is blood flow. So it's really important to focus on blood flow into the pelvic area. So like I've said before, movement exercise like yoga, the self-abdominal massage is really good for improving that flow into the area, preventing any stagnation so that we can bring in plenty of oxygen and nutrients to help that final maturation of the eggs. Things that help with this is acupuncture is a really good one, movement, so walking, yoga, like I said, in terms of exercise, the self-massage, and something I'm doing at the moment, which is amazing, and I have to talk about it in another episode, and I'm trying to actually get my acupuncturist on to interview him, is so I can't think what it's called, hand therapy. So you can actually use this amazing hand therapy using the acupressure points, and then also something called moxibustion, which again on the acupressure points, it can be something that you can do at home when you're working with an acupuncturist, and it can increase the power of the acupuncture that you're doing to really get some, movement into your womb area and really help develop that good lining and focus on your maturation of your egg. Warming blood and your nourishing foods. Now, you could do a whole podcast on these, but eating foods that are encouraging blood foods. And this again comes from more of the Eastern philosophy of things, particularly when you sort of talk to acupuncturists. Things like turmeric, cinnamon, chilies, they're all very warm. Obviously, chilies not everyone can tolerate. For some people, it can be inflammatory. You'll know what you can and can't do. Beef, bone broth, bone marrow, dandelion, parsley, avocado, seaweed, these kind of things are really good for helping to improve your blood and yin from a nourishing point of view. I've got a great handout I give my clients, and I will pop that up for download for the next couple of weeks. And I'll pop the link in the show notes. Then the last couple, thyroid. So it's really important to ensure your thyroid is optimal. This is something obviously less easy to do on a monthly basis, but overall we really want to know that the thyroid is optimal, because it is absolutely key in the energetics of every single cell in your body, and particularly for the maturation of your eggs. So interestingly, I recently chatted with a lovely friend of mine, Kat Smith from Endoplan on Instagram, and I talked all about the thyroid and trying to conceive. So make sure you check this out, and I'll also put it on the show notes if she's kept it she's kept it as a post actually. So you should be able to take a look at that. And then finally, castor oil packs. So these really help reduce inflammation, get movement into the pelvic area, scar tissue adhesions to the area. So this is something that you can do and focus on between your end of your period and ovulation. I tend to recommend, and I also do this on myself, straight after my period is finished, and try and do it for at least 4 consecutive days. And then you're not necessarily having to do it just around ovulation, which, if you're trying to manage having sex, and then you don't really want to have to put your castor oil pack on. If you can, then do, but it just takes that pressure off when there's so much pressure on anyway. Even just 4 days, consecutive days, will really make a difference. So I will be covering what can be done to help optimise ovulation and fertilisation, and then another podcast for embryo implantation and maintenance during this season also. So watch out for those when they come up. Make sure you're subscribed if you've not listened to this before, and it's the first episode that you've done, so that you can get the next episode as soon as it comes out. So I hope that has helped, and it wasn't too overwhelming, because there's quite a lot of information in there, and it's given you some things to go and do right away. If you've got any questions or comments, do send them in. You can either send them to info@endofertilityspecialist.com or on my Instagram or Facebook group. So next week's episode is an interview with an old friend of mine, Maya Cricker, and we'll be talking all about kefir. So that's a fermented drink. She's an artisan. I can't even say it. Artisan kefir maker. It's her business, and she makes amazing kefir, and we talk about the benefits this can bring to your health. And we had a fantastic chat, because I actually haven't chatted to her for years, so it's a really fun one, and I know it will raise a smile and it will make you look into the benefits of fermented drinks.
So have a fantastic Easter. I hope it's enjoyable and not too triggering if you're spending it with family. And the next podcast will be out in 2 weeks' time. So have a great week. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode and have some useful tips and actions you can take away and put into practice. This podcast is to add to your knowledge so you can delve into the whys behind your endo and fertility struggles and move forward with thriving and conceiving. It is not meant to replace your current medical advice. If you loved listening, then make sure to subscribe to get the latest episodes. It would be amazing if you could take a minute to leave a review, as it will help in reaching more women who might benefit. Even better, if you know someone who would love to listen to this episode, then please share. If you want to find out more about who I am and what I do, you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram. I also have a private Facebook group, Thrive and Conceive with Endometriosis, where I share all sorts of nutrition and health nuggets. My website, endofertilityspecialist.com, provides you with lots of information, including my endofertility one-to-one health coaching program. Lastly, don't forget to sign up to my Endofertility Inner Circle to receive weekly news. The links are all in the show notes. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you next week for another episode.